Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Conservation Stories. I'm your host, Tillery Timmons-Sims. Conservation Stories is a podcast that's brought to you by the Sand Hill Area Research Association, which is a mouthful, so we always say Sarah. And I'm excited today because we have John Beusterien with us, and Dr. John he's a professor at Texas Tech and has a passion project that you will find on our website. It's called Lubbock Waters. And I have asked John to come and join us today and give us an update. So first, why don't you start out by giving us a little bit of your background and how you got to Tech and what you do there.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Tillery. It's great to be here. Great to talk with you again. Yeah. Great to be able to talk to Sarah. And thank you to Jackalope and the Lubbock Arts Collective, too. Yeah, my name is John Beusterien. I studied English and economics in college. I later got a PhD in Spanish and moved to Lubbock in 2005. Okay. My daughter grew up here, and I teach college students, but one of my favorite experiences here is when she was in 5th grade and went to talk to them about the region and all my interests in the region, from the history and especially the ecology and about conservation.
So was it kind of just in like the Spanish roots of this area, like that what got you interested, or have you just always been interested in, like, I want to know the history of the places that I live?
Definitely not. I've always been interested in the places where I live, but I think it was Lubbock that brought me there. When I moved here, I did a talk downtown in the Civic Center, and I asked, and I saw there was Coronado High School, and I was like, so where's the book? I want to teach about Spanish and the history of Lubbock. And there wasn't one. And it's been, like I said, 20 years. Finally, I am part of a group of professors, and we have a book coming out on that history. Right. I've been teaching classes about that. That's made me interested in history from since the Dust Bowl in this area, but all the way back to the period when people lived here and they don't even have names as tribes of people. Yes. They still don't have names. I mean, they're named by what technology they use. So it's funny. There's a history professor at Tech who's written a book about my region, which is the Great Lakes region, where there's a lot of water. And he's telling me all about that history, and I'm now interested in that too. So I've kind of found out in my 20s, I'm a literature professor, but I've kind of finding out that I'm very interested in history too. And I write and research and things related to especially Spanish-speaking cultures, but broadly all kind of human history and now geological and animal history too.
Yeah. Well, this is it's a more fascinating area, I think, than people give us credit for. So I've been reading a book about our area called Heaven's Harsh Tableland by Paul Carlson, right? Yes. So great book. And I'm learning a lot about this region, a lot about him, and love to have him on the podcast to talk about that book. It's a great one. You know, I've noticed like that this area, like we're different from Amarillo and we're different from Midland. And why is that? And he talks about those things and the people that started our areas and our towns and stuff, and the difference in the cultures that they brought with them, you know. And so I'm still in the beginning of the book and learning about the different tribes that came through and stopped, you know, along the way, and didn't realize how much of a trading center this area was, you know. And so I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I do too. That particular book, for those of the audience that are in Lubbock, if they go down to one of my favorite places in Lubbock, to Hebrew's Coffee, there's a book that he wrote with some other people to celebrate the centennial of Texas Tech. And it's amazing photographs and it's down, I mean, it's in the coffee shop there, the book, but I recommend you go and take a look at it. Yeah, He's done a deep history, which is, you know, kind of before people even arrived here. Yes. Looked at it, and more kind of in the 20th century he's looked at.
Yeah, it's a very approachable book. It's readable. It's not, I mean, I know I'm weird. I'm not probably normal, but it is kind of one of those that I will have to make myself put it down, you know, because it's not boring history. It's interesting. He makes it really interesting. He writes really well.
Yeah, one of the things I think is fascinating about this area is we kind of came and settled here almost later than anywhere else.
Yes.
I mean, being only 100 years old, Texas Tech, and the city itself isn't much older than 1925. And but for being one of the latest inhabited places where you have permanent habitation houses, it's the oldest place, or one of the oldest in the Americas, where people have lived continuously. So it's meaning they came here more than 12,000 years ago, have lived on what I call the Llano Staccato, the Southern High Plains, and they haven't moved. They've moved around because they followed where the water sources were, where the animals were, but they've stayed here. And there's a wonderful woman who's still working here. Her name's Eileen Johnson. She's in charge of the museums and she does archaeology here. She's written, it's a little bit technical, but one of my I see as my jobs is bringing all the great work she's doing about the history of this area, because it's not a written history, but it's an amazing history and of the cultures that lived here, what they were doing. We still don't know anything about it. That's kind of why I like it. It's just a big mystery, but it's fascinating. Yeah. So
today's episode is brought to you by Evan Stone with Clear Rock Farm and Ranch, part of the Clear Rock Realty Group in Lubbock, Texas. Evan understands West Texas land, agriculture, and what it takes to buy and sell farms and ranches in our unique region. If you're ready to make your next move, trust someone who knows the lay of the land. Visit Evan at clearrockrealty.com, serving Lubbock and the surrounding communities. Clear Rock Farms and Ranch, your partner on the plains. It's, I grew up in Tillery County, so south of here.
Okay.
Where there's a lot of the Mound Lake, Ridge Lake.
Okay.
So, and there's a man in our town, in Brownfield, my hometown, that has an extensive collection of Indian artifacts and is just very knowledgeable, on those kind of things. And I know that I've seen, mammoth bones, and it is such an interesting area.
So that's one of my favorite interesting things for people. They think of, if you go out to Lubbock Lake Landmark and you see the big Columbian mammoth there, you think, oh, these are long, before humans, but they were taking tools, the people living here, from the bones and doing things or carving them. And so that's kind of fascinating when you think people living alongside. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, dinosaurs, no, humans weren't around, but around all these amazing extinct animals, they were here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
that's really cool.
One of my first introductions to that is from Louis L'Amour. I don't know if you ever read Louis L'Amour, but he was...
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, so he prolific Western writer, but he was a historian. He never wrote about anywhere that he did not go and see and understand the history.
Yeah, I think that's so important.
And he would, in fact, in the preface of many of his books, he would talk about, flying over the region and like the details about the knowledge that he acquired. He was also a poet. He wrote a series called The Sacketts.
The Sacketts?
The Sacketts. And in the Sacketts...
is that the family name?
That's the family
Sacketts,
name, yeah. So it's multiple generations of them. And in one of them, they encounter a mammoth.
Oh, wait. Oh, they're alive then? And they come. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
They encounter, and it's kind of like a mythical, like they're so rare at that time that, it was kind of a shock for them all to see this mammoth, So those are great. That's a great series. He's a great author. And that's the thing that I like about him, is that he's, they're historical fictions, but the history that he incorporates is really good. He does a great job.
Even people that grow up here or nearby here, they don't know things like the rich animal life. I mean, how many horny toads were going around Lubbock 30 years ago, but just in general, the whole rich ecosystem life. But at the same time, like I went earlier this summer with a friend of mine who's got an article in a book about water that I wrote. He took us out to where he works. He works for the USDA, in the ranch land where he's regulating the water. Is people can't go on the ranch. So it was great because my daughter was walking around and finding signs of all these early, 600 to 6,000 year old artifacts still on and I'm like, just leave those, because these are really, and so they're
very important.
Yeah. And so in places that people haven't been able to take, like your friend in Cary. But I mean, I do know a lot of towns here where there's amazing stuff, both in people's houses and in local museums, all through the, from the Panhandle all the way down here.
We have, in fact, a stone, a grinding stone with the, that we found on some of my father-in-law's land.
See, I think that's fascinating because that's when I mentioned Eileen Johnson before. People generally think that it was kind of just hunting, but there were all kinds of places where there was either, she's found evidence that there was also agrarian examples.
Right.
Yeah.
I know he mentions in his book, Paul mentions in his book, like, there were, I think it's in that book, I can't remember now, but anyway, there were things that they would plant that they could come back and get at the next season, like carrots or potatoes or, things like that. So anyway, fascinating. I love this. I love the history. And really, I guess it was in studying history. Is that what led you to water and the reality of our water situation system, or the way water works here?
I can't put a pinpoint on any specific thing. I would say that when I got here, like I said, I wanted to find that class about the history and Spanish here, Spanish-speaking cultures, Spanish-speaking people. Did the people just arrive, or were the people here before we? When were they here? But the main topic that I'm a literature professor first and foremost, and culture professor. And when I first got here, I was just fascinated by animals, and I would say my interest in animals and the history of animals in the region brought me to water. I can't say anything specific except early on when I would even be teaching something like Don Quixote, which is this really important novel. It's like the most translated novel after the Bible. I mean, it's a very well-renowned novel. I taught a class on that, but we went up to Nazareth, Texas to learn about Daryl Birkenfeld's Ogallala Commons. We found out about his house and how he was capturing water, how he has a really rich harvest there on his land, and went to his Playa Lake classroom. And I've always combined things that people wouldn't think you could combine. And so I think that was probably the biggest single thing that brought me to water. I'm not really, really sure, except that if I think about it, my subconscious, it might be I come from a place where water is all over the place, and I've lived here for 20 years, and I would say, and I like taking walks every day, and especially with the dogs that I've had while I've lived here. And I was always fascinated by the water system that flows through Lubbock, which is the largest urban waterscape in the country specifically waterscape that uses reused water. And for many years, I always just admired it and thought it was a thing of the past. But the guy who did it, Jim Bertram, who was the director of city planning in Lubbock in the early 70s, essentially did it. And we're now friends. He lives out in Ransom Canyon, and I've written an article, a chapter in a book that I have with him. And with respect, new things of water happening with respect to Lubbock. He's been an advisory person, and I'm amazed that he's still around, and it's great. And I'm glad.
Really know that. I grew up, of course, with a well. Lived for many years with my own well, and then so really about 13 years ago we moved to Lubbock. So it's the first time I've ever not had my own well.
Yeah.
And so I've heard that like Lubbock's, like their planning for water has always been kind of ahead of the times, which is not something I think you would say a whole lot for Lubbock all the time,
Yeah.
But it is it is interesting, and I did not know until you just said that we're the largest urban center for water reuse.
That reuses dirty water and then puts it back into a system. The park we have, this is the first water conservation district in the country, and this is way back. But later on,
so Lubbock in particular, but the Southern High Plains.
I forget what number we are, and if you guys want the details of this, it's pretty interesting, and I could figure it out. Right, I
knew there was. I think. Well, that we were the first district in the state, but I don't think I recognized on the national level.
I think it's in the national level.
Wow. Okay.
And I think that's important for the story that I'm about to tell, because I think that might have something to do with me being, I found that out later.
Yeah.
But Jim, well, what we had basically in the late 60s and before, we used the canyons, in the region basically to throw all our junk. Yes. And people still do that in some parts. Yeah. And those canyons, essentially our major source of water is the Ogallala Aquifer. Sometimes there are creeks that get water, but there's no flowing river in this area. Right. Even the lakes are not real lakes.
Right.
We have playa lakes, but what we have is the Ogallala. Right. Your pump gets water related to your well pump. We were throwing a lot of bad water in the east side, and he basically got money, first of all, to clean up all the mess, which were cars, and what did it was the tornado, because we got federal funding to clean up, and he did a combined thing with the federal government, the state government, Parks and Rec, and Lubbock. He actually got a bond to pass to clean up all of our canyons and the water system. He built those berms or dams. And created that lake system which flows. And so when I said the longest urban water park area, I was referring to the system where he takes the water just past where it's just near where the Lubbock Lake landmark is on the other side of the expressway, and then it flows for like 6 miles into Dunbar Lake. Right. That's the lake system that I'm talking about, which I've always thought was just a natural water flow, but really that water gets cleaner as it goes. It's a natural cleaning system. And so that by the end, it's a lot of it's been clean. That's a little bit of me exaggerating, because I've been asking scientists in the area if the water is clean. I think a lot still has to be done.
Sure, right.
But amazingly, there's a filter system that it's just the flow and the land that helps clean that up. So I've been fascinated by that. And when I found out that the person who actually made that happen is still around, he's a great inspiration for me in terms of me living here. So.
Which is one of the last questions I always am asking is, who is someone that you think people should know about? And it's obviously Jim. Yes. And Daryl Birkenfield, of course, too. Yeah. Both of them very instrumental in your interest and the awareness of our water around us. But that system, I've always gone back and forth, and my husband and I have speculated on why what is to me the most attractive part of Lubbock is that canyon that runs through there. It's, it's the only place where there's some movement on the land, you know what I mean? And there's, there's more trees there and everything. And why it was from the beginning treated like wasteland. And we've speculated that it's because you couldn't farm it. You couldn't make an income off of it. And so, you're not going to throw your trash on some place where you need to farm. And so that's kind of our speculation. And I think that I'm hoping as we move on through the decades that that land in there becomes more important to us, and we begin to utilize it better than we have. That park system to me is one of our best features, and it'd be great to see it be more utilized.
Yeah, it was built as a recreation area.
Out here on the Texas plains, water is everything. And there's a resource that's as vital as it is fragile: our playa lakes. These lakes are nature's reservoir, catching rainwater to recharge our aquifer and provide lifelines for wildlife. But now they need our help. In collaboration with the Texas Ply Lakes Conservation Initiative and the Cargill Global Water Challenge, Sarah has started the Our Legacy is Tomorrow's Water initiative to inspire and work with landowners to restore and protect our Ply Lakes. Each playa we save helps secure a sustainable water future for the generations that will be coming after us. Whether it's improving soil health, restoring habitats, or recharging groundwater, we are committed to making a difference. Together, we can build a legacy that we can all be proud of. To learn how you can join in, visit the Ply Lakes Restoration Initiative page on the Sarah website. Let's keep Texas water flowing strong for the future. Visit sarah-conservation.com.
I should, just to introduce a bit of tension. In the 70s, the Lubbock Avalanche Journal published a lot of arguments on why that shouldn't happen. And they mainly came from Eileen Johnson, who's been working for 50 years, because underneath all that, talking about, people who have lived here much longer. It's where those people lived for the past more than 12,000 years. So it's all underwater, and it's also where the animals came and lived. And so there is so much history underneath that, which should be looked at. And there are people that I know who think it's a disgrace that we never properly got that information before we covered it up.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it is, for me, I agree with you. It's a beautiful area, but I would emphasize that it's artificial, and that we need to think about that in terms of what we think is natural beauty. But I think a lot has to be done with that history behind it, but also making that a much better utilized place. And my main goal that I have is this Lubbock Waters, which is this museum. Which is really
why we're here to talk about. We haven't even got to yet, but I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah, which in a way, just to get, it kind of tries to celebrate both of those. When my daughter grew up here, there wasn't the lazy river pool, and even that for people who live in Lubbock is not really accessible. It's more of a Big 12 university thing. And I'm more interested in kids having a place to have fun, but not even knowing when they have fun, they're learning amazing things. They're learning that you don't just turn on a tap or go to the bathroom and water comes and goes and you don't know where it goes or where it comes from. And so that's kind of part of the whole dream that I have, which is, I've been working on that for about 5 or 6 years. I created Lubbock Waters website before I even had done an international conference about it. Now I'm making movement forward about having exhibits and things like that.
Yeah. So and for people that don't know, we have a page on our website dedicated to that project, Lubbock Waters, and because we met, 2023, I think it's was the first and only time really that we met in person. We've spoken over the phone, But I was super intrigued because I didn't know anything about what you were doing or what you were thinking about, and so kind of what do you envision out there in terms of a museum, and do you have an idea of can you talk about maybe where it would be located, and is it you're talking about something that's in addition to something that's already out there, or what's your dream for that?
A place where kids can go and have fun in water, with water, using water, and they kind of walk away knowing more about the ecosystem of that region and conservation.
Yeah.
When I take walks, there's near Aslan Park, there is an area where there's an old trestle where the city's done some things with water there. There's a specific area. When we were talking before about the canyon, still, if you go through that canyon, Yellow House Canyon, we still have junkyards in that area because probably for a lot of reasons, I think, I'm from Detroit. and the river was used just as industrial ways and waste. And only now are there otters and more information about that river happening. And in the same way, I'm hoping that there will be more about that canyon that people know about. People will be excited going it. I'm definitely not interested that the Lubbock Waters be like a river walk at all.
Yeah.
I'm interested in, by river walk, I mean various restaurants and places that people go to San Antonio to go to these. I'm interested in people coming to Lubbock, making this actually a place on the map where people would want to go to be at this Lubbock Waters place. But I do see it, museum is the best word that I use for it, but I see it as a community place, both for people to go and bring their families, but also the best and smartest people who are working with water and involved in water, things that are going on with Sarah about, water. I see that as having a research arm, as many places, so there's like a lot of important libraries across the world where people can go and research. But then there's also part of those libraries where they're doing something very specific, and there's a group of people doing really smart things. I would like to see really smart people doing the most innovative things with water. I mean, just to talk about what my dream is. That the water, and I brought, when I had that conference, I brought people in from Arizona where, the water, where it's even more arid, but the water is getting even cleaner and reused quicker. It's going to be happening really soon. And I'm interested in that this place be a kind of non-profit place where even companies or whoever is doing something, city government or West Texas, where they come and have information.
One of the things I've heard people say is they don't like to go there because they don't feel safe. And and I can understand that. I personally have, my husband and I walk there. That's, if I'm going to go choose to walk somewhere, that's where I'm going to choose to go. But
when you say there, which part of the lake system?
Canyon,
the whole lake system.
Whole lake
There are some bike routes too. You can let people go.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's made to walk. It really is. It's one of the few long walkable pathways that we have, but I know that one time I was at the amphitheater at a Moonlight musical.
Yeah.
And the director there gave the statistics of crime in that little area, and it has just disappeared when they put that amphitheater in. The crime rate went down so much.
Yeah.
And that is something I thought of, was like, how do we, there's a lot of good people that live around there that could utilize that, not just, bringing in people from the southwest part of Lubbock to utilize it, but there's so many, families and people in that area that, it's in their backyard, and making something that is easily accessible to them, that's safe. Yeah. That's really appealing to me too.
No, thank you for saying that. The way I teach, I've always for the last 20 years, not just now, have wanted to teach my classes in a way where, now it would be in terms of AI doesn't matter. You can use AI, but that's not the point of my class. Or before it was internet or virtual class, doesn't matter. What does that mean? It means like, as part of my classes, we will all go to these spaces and take a walk. So one of my last times I went with my class out to this, what I call Lubbock Waters, which were my dream, it's the specific location that I'm thinking of, along the Jim Bertram lake system. I brought my student, and one of my students goes, "This is not where you go in Lubbock. You go to the mall. That's where I went growing up." She grew up in Lubbock. Right. And but she was impressed by it, and very surprised by it, because it's also, when you talk about, trees, there are no trees that naturally grow here, but they do grow along the system and that sort of thing. Right. So, and shade and lots of other things. But you're right. I do think, and this is, I don't know how to say this there's still sometimes master gardener groups or people like that will go and clean up, but in general, there's a lot of trash, but then and there's also a side of urban life where along the areas that I'm interested in going that are not, you can tell people have been sleeping there or doing whatever there. They shouldn't, you wouldn't want to just send your kids to go, or my wife wouldn't want to just take a walk there by herself or whatever. Yeah.
Right. But I think that, reclaiming those areas and, finding ways for the people that are there to maybe utilize other programs or places that are provided for them by the city to go. And then the more we outnumber, the good people are outnumbering the people that might cause trouble, I think the better off. And they're not going to go if there's nothing for them to do with their kids. There's no reason for them to be there.
I mean, I should say, just to be very clear, that this is, even though it was a while ago that we talked, this kind of vision is a very slow thing. I mean, if in 10 years, if ground has been, the shovel has been taken and this is starting to happen, I would be very happy. I mean, but since we've talked, it has moved along, which I'm very happy about.
That's great. That's great. You've got because that's a part of it. I mean, nothing happens without money.
Yeah. It
just doesn't. And, finding people that you can connect to that have that same vision to make people aware of the potential for that. And some of that may be, good data for you, maybe looking at what's happened with the Moonlight musical and,
for sure.
Hey,
all that
this is what we see and know that can happen here.
Yeah.
So I think I love it. I've loved the idea from the beginning. And I think, there's been a lot of frustration about the lack of places for people to go. And I know the splash pads have become important,
right.
There's really, and then there's a small, at the Tech, the Ranching Heritage Center, there's a small little river that the kids can, it's not even a river, it's just a little puddle. But
love it. Yeah, I've been there. I love all that work. That's kind of similar to the place I'm thinking. I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing. The more that we can do and provide good things, some people get used to thinking there's not anything here to do, and there really are things to do. Sometimes you just have to dig to find them. Well, thanks, John, for joining us, and people will put up link to the webpage and all that kind of stuff, and put up your information. So if people are interested in learning more about the vision or how they might contribute, love for them to connect with you.
I would thank you for that. Again, I'm John Beusterien. I'm doing Lubbock Waters this year. I'm involved mostly at Texas Tech. It's not my full-time job to do Lubbock Waters, but I have a lot of support and people helping me this year. Our goal is we've created this storyboard for an animation for the first exhibit, and we plan on piloting that. Actually, not for a whole year, but we're developing it this year. And that's just one exhibit, which will be accompanied by other exhibits. We want to pilot it at schools in Lubbock, but also other places like museum in San Angelo, and a library. And so those are some of the things that we're looking forward in the future.
That's great. Great. Good to know. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you, friends, for joining us for another episode of Conservation Stories. And we hope you've enjoyed this and that you will get a hold of John if you've got some interest in learning more and how you can help. We will see you again on the next episode.